For years, I was treated like the black sheep of the family, while my brother was always seen as the golden child. No matter how hard I worked, my parents brushed it off and called my startup a waste of time. At this year's Christmas dinner, the comments and jokes finally crossed the line. Then my brother, with a smirk, asked how much my little business had sold for. The room went quiet as everyone waited for my answer. I didn't just respond, I shattered their assumptions with a nine-figure truth. My name is Chloe Carter, and for 28 years, I have been nothing more than background noise in my own home. To my parents, I was simply the responsible one, the child who would be fine no matter what, which was really just their excuse to never pay attention to me. They reserved every ounce of their praise and every single "we are so proud of you" speech for my older brother and his big, shiny life. This Christmas was supposed to be his victory lap again, a little celebration for his promotion, as if I were just extra seating at his party. They had no absolute idea that weeks earlier, I had wired more money into my bank account than our entire family had seen in their lives combined, or that the little side project they rolled their eyes at had just been bought for $170 million. Growing up as Chloe Carter meant learning early that love in our house came with a ranking system, and I was never in first place. I was the kid who brought home science fair ribbons and straight A's in biology, while my older brother, Ryan, was the one scoring winning touchdowns and getting his name announced over the loudspeaker. Guess which achievements my parents chose to frame on the wall? They called me low maintenance like it was a compliment, a way to justify ignoring my needs. "Chloe does not need all that fuss," my mother would say, obsessively adjusting Ryan's tie before yet another one of his award ceremonies. Even when I got into a highly competitive nursing program on a full scholarship, my dad just gave a distracted nod. "That is great, honey," he said, before immediately turning to ask Ryan how his business major was going. It was as if my entire life was just a warm-up act for the real show. The irony is that being ignored made me dangerous. While they were glued to Ryan's highlight reel, I was learning how to read EKGs, start IVs, and think with total clarity while someone was coding right in front of me. I took a job as a night shift ER nurse straight out of school, handling chaos they could not even imagine. We stabilized car crash victims and stroke patients every single night, making 3 a.m. calls that meant the difference between life and death. In the quiet pockets of time between emergencies, when other nurses were scrolling through their phones, I was sketching out an idea on scraps of paper. I kept seeing the same problems: chaotic staffing, missed handoffs, and dangerous delays because no one had a clear picture of what was happening in the department. With the help of a programmer friend from school named Maya Lopez, I started building a platform we called Pulse Link. It was a real-time coordination system for emergency departments. At first, it was just a rough prototype. I would drag myself home at 7 a.m., shower, and crash for a few hours before waking up to chug coffee and hop on calls with Maya. We would debug software issues while my neighbors were making dinner, and then I would head back to the hospital for another 12-hour shift. My family knew exactly 1% of this. To them, I was still just working nights, which translated in my mother's head to mean I was not doing anything worth posting on Facebook. They knew every single detail of Ryan's life, though. He became an investment analyst and then a future partner at his firm. They even cashed out part of their retirement to help him with a down payment on a condo, calling it supporting his future. When I once asked if they could co-sign a small line of credit so Maya and I could focus on Pulse Link, my dad actually laughed. "Sweetheart, apps are a fad," he told me. "Be realistic, nursing is your backup plan. Do not risk that on some tech fantasy." It was funny how my steady, life-saving job was considered a backup plan when it came to my dreams, yet Ryan's spreadsheets were treated as visionary. The night everything changed, I was on a break in the staff lounge, half asleep in a plastic chair. When I checked my phone, I had missed calls from an unknown number and a text from Maya in all caps: "Answer your phone. We got it." I stepped into a supply closet, my heart pounding, and called her back. She was crying and laughing at the same time. The hospital board we had been pitching to for months had agreed to a pilot, and a major medical software company in San Francisco wanted to acquire us outright. The number they mentioned made my knees buckle. I finished my shift in a total daze, spending the next week juggling contracts and lawyers in between triaging patients. While my parents were sending digital invitations for Ryan's promotion party with champagne emojis, I was in a glass conference room downtown signing away a company I had built on energy drinks and pure stubbornness. When the wire finally hit, showing $170 million, I stared at my banking app like it might glitch and disappear. I cried in my car, then went to work my shift because people still needed their meds passed. I did not tell my parents immediately because I knew they would just minimize it or find a way to make it about themselves. When my mom called a week before Christmas to say they were doing a special dinner for Ryan's promotion, I realized this was the moment. I was going to sit at that table and let them play their usual roles one last time. On Christmas Day, I parked my old, beat-up Honda at the curb. I did not wear designer clothes or bring a luxury handbag. I wanted to look exactly like the daughter they chose to ignore. Inside, the house smelled like cinnamon and perfume. My mother, Linda, gave me a quick hug and immediately told me I looked tired, suggesting I find a calmer job so I would not burn out. She did not even wait for my response before bragging about the artisanal wine Ryan had brought. In the living room, Ryan was standing in the center of the floor like he owned the place, sporting an expensive watch and a slim-fit dress shirt. My dad, Paul, was hanging on his every word. Ryan smirked when he saw me, asking if they finally let me out of the hospital dungeon. He asked how that app thing was going, telling me not to let it distract me from my real work. My dad chimed in, calling me the practical kid they never had to worry about, unlike Ryan, who had so much riding on him with high stakes and big dollars. I stood there, invisible as always, listening to them toast to their star. When we finally sat down for dinner, I was placed at the far end of the table, positioned perfectly to act as a waitress for the rest of them. As they poured the wine, Ryan started in on me again, suggesting that maybe someday he could get me an interview at his firm so I could get out of the grind. He even used air quotes when referring to my app, asking if I was still asking the universe to manifest $1 million. I felt the familiar burn in my chest, but this time, it was different. I set my fork down gently. I am not manifesting $1 million anymore, I said calmly. Ryan cocked his head and asked if I had finally given up on my little fantasy. No, I replied, looking him dead in the eye. I sold my company. The room went quiet in stages. My mom's smile froze and my dad blinked in confusion. Ryan's smirk faltered, and he asked how much my worthless business could have possibly gone for. I took a slow sip of water and let the silence hang for a second. $170 million, I said. I watched the color drain from my mother's face as the reality of those words began to shatter the hierarchy they had spent years building. The silence that followed my announcement was heavier than any physical weight I had ever carried. It was as if someone had pulled a plug on the entire room, draining the light and the noise until all that remained was the shocked, slackened expressions of the people who were supposed to know me best. My dad looked at me with the same disoriented expression I had seen on patients when their heart monitors did not match the way they felt. He was staring at a reality that contradicted everything he believed to be true. Ryan's smug laughter sputtered out, replaced by a sharp, defensive edge. He told me I was lying, insisting that people do not just sell things for that kind of money while still driving a beat-up car and living in an apartment with squeaky steps. If I had that kind of wealth, he argued, they would have known. I tilted my head, looking at him with a calm that seemed to frustrate him further. You never asked, I reminded him. You barely listen when I talk about my patients, let alone my company. You assumed you knew my whole life because you knew my job title. You know the hours I work, but you have no idea what I have been building with them. My mother clutched her napkin, her knuckles white. She whispered my name, pleadingly, asking if this was some cruel joke designed to ruin her son's celebration. I cut her off, my patience finally thinning. I told her I was simply sharing my news at a family dinner, and if this was truly about family, my success should be celebrated too. My dad cleared his throat, his voice sounding small and uncertain. He asked why I had not come to them first, why I had kept such a massive part of my life a secret. That question forced a bitter laugh out of me. I reminded him of the time I had asked for a tiny line of credit, and he told me to be realistic. I reminded them both of how they would change the subject to Ryan's quarterly bonuses every time I tried to explain what PulseLink actually did. Ryan's eyes flicked between our parents and me, a flicker of genuine panic rising in him. He was used to being the main character of every story told in this house, and suddenly, he had been relegated to a supporting role. He challenged me then, his voice frantic, demanding that I show him my account. Normally, I would loathe the idea of proving my worth through a bank balance, but I knew this was the only language they truly understood. I pulled up my banking app and set the phone face up on the table. I did not show everything, but I showed enough zeros to make my dad suck in a sharp breath. My mother's hand flew to her mouth in a gesture of pure shock. Ryan stared at the screen as if he could will the numbers to change, his mind racing to a conclusion he hated. He was no longer the most successful child in the family. He muttered a curse, staring at me as if I were a stranger. He could not grasp how the girl they never had to worry about, the nurse in the sensible shoes, had done something this massive. I explained it as simply as I could. I saw a problem at work, I built a solution, and people with power saw the value and paid for it. My mother whispered that they should have known, that they were my parents. I asked her why, pointing out that every time I tried to speak, they talked over me. They knew every detail of Ryan's career, but could not even name the hospital where I spent my nights saving lives. When my dad tried to claim they had always supported me, the years of swallowed words finally clawed their way out. I told them the truth about their support. They had dipped into retirement for Ryan's condo, co-signed for his cars, and labeled his failed investments as learning experiences. When I asked for a fraction of that, I was called reckless. Ryan snapped at me, claiming it was not fair because he had real prospects while I was just playing with code. I threw his own words back at him, reminding him of the time he took a photo of my early dashboard just to send it to his friends as a joke. He shut his mouth instantly, the memory hitting him like a physical blow. My mother looked shaken, murmuring that they had no idea it was serious and asking why I had not pushed harder to make them listen. It was the classic move, turning the blame back on me for their own lack of interest. I told her I was simply tired of begging my own parents to treat me as more than an accessory to Ryan's success. The room felt tight and suffocating. My dad asked what happened now, his voice oddly fragile. He noted that I was rich and did not need them. I told him I never needed them for money. I needed them to care. I needed them to see me. Ryan pushed back his chair, the legs screeching against the floor. He accused me of coming there just to flex and humiliate him at his own celebration. I countered that it was a Christmas dinner they had renamed for him. I asked him why my success felt like an attack if this was truly about family. He glared at me, calling me a victim, but I told him I didn't want a spotlight, I just wanted room to exist. I stood up and took my phone back, telling them I hadn't come for validation, but to tell them who I am. As I walked toward the door, past the tree and the photos where I was always blurred at the edges, Ryan followed me into the hall. He was raw and unpolished, his composure completely shattered. He told me I couldn't just drop a bomb and leave, but I told him to watch me. He claimed I was making him look like a joke in front of his professional circle, worrying more about his image than his sister. I told him his biggest fear was looking stupid, while mine had been dying in a hallway because no one listened when I said I wasn't okay. My mother began to cry real, messy tears this time. She admitted to my dad that they had done this, pitting us against each other by assuming I was fine while he needed everything. My dad's shoulders slumped in defeat, admitting they were wrong and that they couldn't undo the past. Ryan looked at me with a new kind of fear, the fear of losing the version of life where he was the only one who mattered. He asked hoarsely if I was cutting them off. I shook my head, meeting Ryan's eyes with a steady gaze that didn't waver. No, I said, I am not disappearing. I am building a world where I finally exist. Whether you choose to see me or not, you can be part of it if you are willing to do the work. If not, I will be okay. For the first time in my life, I truly knew that was true. I grabbed my coat from the hook by the door, the fabric cool against my skin. My mother reached out for me, then stopped midair, as if realizing that empty promises and frantic apologies would not work this time. "We will call you," she said weakly, "once we have thought about what to say." "Take your time," I replied, "but don't call me to ask for money." Ryan's cheeks reddened instantly, and he started to protest, but I cut him in. "You already hinted at it," I said. "You asked how my success would look for you at work. You are scared your boss will find out your baby sister is more successful than you on paper. Newsflash, that is not my problem. You have your own path to walk." I stepped outside into the icy air, the cold biting but feeling remarkably clean. Behind me, the muffled sounds of my family arguing rose and fell, fading as I walked away. It hurt, of course it did, but under the hurt, something else was blooming. A strange, fierce peace had taken root. For once, I had not folded myself into a smaller shape to fit their expectations. I walked to my car feeling like my spine was made of steel. In the weeks following that Christmas, my family did exactly what I expected. They went quiet. No group chats, no New Year texts, no memes from my mom. At first, the silence felt like standing in a room after a fire, smelling smoke, and not being sure what was still standing. I threw myself into my new reality instead. I had meetings with the acquiring company, strategy sessions on scaling PulseLink, and visits to hospitals where nurses' faces lit up when they saw how much easier their workflow became. For the first time, I was talking to people who saw my brain first, not my place in a family hierarchy. I also started therapy, not because I was broken, but because I was tired of dragging old wounds into new rooms. My therapist taught me that favoritism isn't just unfair. It is a form of emotional neglect that sets the golden child up to crash the moment the real world stops treating them like a star. I saw that crash firsthand in the second week of January when Ryan called me. He sounded smaller, his usual arrogance replaced by a hollow tone. He confessed that he had gotten sloppy at work, riding too high on the promotion my parents had basically turned into a holiday. He had made bad calls, leaked client names at a bar, and sent wrong attachments. His firm was reevaluating his trajectory. I told him I was sorry, and I meant it. Watching an identity crumble is painful, even if it was built on a shaky foundation. He told me he finally understood a tiny bit of what it felt like when your worth is tied to what people think you will become rather than who you actually are. A week later, I met my parents at a cafe. They looked 10 years older, finally forced to see their own patterns. My mom cried real tears, and my dad admitted he had been intimidated by my potential, making it easier to just focus on Ryan. They said the words I hadn't let myself hope for: "We are sorry. We were wrong. We want to do better." I didn't fix it with a single hug. I told them I needed time and set strict boundaries. I wasn't their retirement plan or Ryan's safety net. Slowly, over the next year, they changed. They asked about my work and actually listened. Ryan eventually asked if he could work for me, not as a brother, but as someone starting over. I told him maybe, if he was okay starting at the bottom. I learned that your value does not start when your family finally sees it. It has been there the whole time. My parents ignoring me didn't erase my worth. It just delayed the moment they finally had to face it. Standing up for yourself in a system like that isn't selfish, it is survival.